Hello, I'm Barbara Gon Mueller, and I welcome you to today's podcast. This is the kind of podcast that you're going to get real information, real facts, because I get asked all the time, Dear Mrs. Gon, Mrs. Mueller, how do I get a job working for peace? And these are people with PhDs, some of them. These are people with master's degrees, and these are people in high school who want to prepare to work for peace and make this world a better place. And so I said to myself, well, I know a lot about getting jobs. I did it for the colleges, but is there a book out there that somebody can read? So I went on Amazon. And when I was on Amazon, this book appeared, Peace Jobs. And it's amazing the stories that are in this for a career working for peace. And I said, I hope I can find this author, James. Nope, that's not James. This is David J. Smith. And I say James because I have so many Smiths in my life, but I love this one, David J. Smith. So I go on his podcast. No, I go on his website. And it says, if you'd like to get in touch with me, fill this out. I filled it out. And within 20 minutes, he answered me. So I figured this is the man for me. He's action. He's filled with facts. And we're on Peace Podcast for peace, happiness, and mutually assured survival. Welcome, David J. Smith.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, it's my honor. I was writing about you for our newsletter, and I said, you're one of the people that we need to hear from today. And you gave me your whole bio. Let me just read a few of the amazing things. He's an educator, a consultant, a career coach focusing on the fields of conflict resolution, peace building, humanitarian action. He's the president of Forage Center for Peace Building and Humanitarian Education, a 501c3 not-for-profit, which offers experiential learning opportunities for students and professionals. He's received the William Frieder Award for Distinguished Service in the field of conflict resolution. Think about those words. In the field of conflict resolution. He has published Peace Jobs. The more you hear about his book, you'll understand why I love his book. I was reading it today, and I came to this story about a person in Hawaii, and she was interested in doing work, and so she became a volunteer at the American Red Cross National Headquarters for humanitarian law, and her whole career came from her volunteer work. Mm-hmm. Beginning for some people, David?
Yeah, a lot of people start their career almost as a hobby, right? In a way that, we often look at the things we find meaning from, and they're not necessarily jobs as much as things we do in the evenings or the weekends or other times that we do things. And then we realize that we love this thing so much and we're getting so much meaning and satisfaction out of it that somehow we're able to make it into a career. So that happens for a lot of people that way. It's very important. It's very important to leave yourself open for that.
It is important. And as I read your questions, what is a peace job? Maybe you could just start.
Well, that's a good question. And a peace job is really one of the things to recognize is that for a long time, when people talked about working for peace, their definition of a career in peace was somewhat limited. And that is, we thought in terms of people working in conflict resolution or humanitarian work, or maybe, working in fields where they're trying to resolve conflict and differences. And that's very important. And that work is still there, being a diplomat. But one of the things that I argue is that almost any job, I would say any job that you're in, any career you're in, you can carve a piece of that work out to create peace, to create space for the resolution of differences, for creating understanding, for allowing people to be their authentic selves and do those things. So I say, people who are artists, people who are musicians, people who are IT people, they can carve out a part of that work and be meaningful about it. I think about one of the examples I always use are educators, that people who are teachers, they do very, very important work, right? They they teach you whatever skill or development or attitude or whatever. But one of the things I recognize is that in order to live in a peaceful society, people need to do things like add and count and subtract and know mathematics, right? And if you have these skills, you can pursue a life that's fulfilling and peaceful. Well, that's a peace job also, right? Anything where you can empower yourself and empower others, that's that type of work.
I wrote an article once called Take Your Passion and Make It Happen. And the teachers that have influenced me the most were the ones that had a passion for what they were
Right,
doing.
right,
That
right.
passion translated into me studying harder because I thought, boy, if they could be that excited about education, there's something in there for me.
Yes, yes. Passion is really, really critical. And, passion looks different for different people. Some people it's excitement, but sometimes it brings them a sense of focus and a sense of meaning and kind of purpose in what they're doing in life. So, people want to get up in the morning and say, I can make a difference in this world. I can change somebody's life. That's a form of passion also that I would say.
Just by being present. That's why I
Yes.
do Peace Podcast, because I want to create a world that is mutually assured survival for all. And if we take our passion and the destiny that we were born with, think of the ways that we could get into the trends and expectations in careers and peace building. Talk about that. Are there careers in peace building, or do we develop them in the career we're in?
Well, there are two ways of approaching. So, in one way, you develop it in the career that you're in. And I really believe that's important. People will say, well, I've got to make this big change and get re-educated and get retrained. I said, not necessarily. You just need to bring some of that insight into the work that you have. So, it may be a matter of approaching your boss or your employer and saying, can I create this space in my job where, maybe I can work to resolve these differences at work. We have people called ombuds persons at work, and maybe you can do a little bit of that. Or can I take a little bit of my work and on behalf of my employer, go do some volunteer work that would be part of my work? Can I do that also? So you can create these little spaces. There are jobs, though, that are more directly working in peace and conflict resolution, right? And so, for instance, we see around the world, for instance, people who work um, to alleviate poverty, to alleviate injustice, to make a better world. I mean, we have a challenge right now in Washington because a lot of those positions in international development, for instance, are going away. So that's going to be harder for people to do, at least in some parts of the world. But that's really important work also. So that continues to grow because there's a need. There's a need around the world to alleviate injustices and deprivation and poverty. So unfortunately, peace is something that we would all like to work so hard that we put ourselves out of business.
Right.
There's no poverty, there's no injustice, there's no conflict, that
Yes.
type of thing.
But you mentioned something that, I'm also a Rotarian, and I do this podcast called it's a website, mutuallyassuredsurvival.world. And
Okay.
we highlight there Peace Fellows. If you're not a Rotarian, you might qualify for a peace degree. So go to Mutually Assured Survival and take a look at the opportunities for you to get an advanced degree. Well, that's one way.
And I know that program, Barbara. I'm
You
very,
do.
I do know that program. Yeah, because I teach at George Mason University at the Carter School, the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace and Conflict.
Yes.
And the Rotarians have a partnership in working with that school. So I'm very familiar with that program. It's
Are you
very
still working at them with the Georgetown?
no, George Mason. I teach
I'm
at George.
sorry, George Mason, of
I teach
course.
at George Mason. Yeah, yeah, in the
Because
Carter.
David Frischman is one of my peace podcasts, and he recently passed, and he
Oh,
left money so that we could have $250,000 devoted to getting Rotarians in the Carter School together to bring peace to our planet.
oh, wow! I did not know that. That's very important.
Well,
So thank you.
go to
I,
peacepodcast.org and you'll find David Frischman. And
I'll listen
you're
to it.
you're already explaining how to prepare to have a job or a career in peace building. And I know you will give us some hints from the book itself. You just give so many examples. I mean, That's the model that I like. Share what is already working.
Right.
Share so people get it. Why do I do Peace Podcast? Because I want people to learn from you, David. I want them to learn that it is possible to do the career that you want and to be excited about it if you involve yourself with that thought that peace is here wherever
Yes.
I am.
Right, right. I think quite often we don't recognize what's available to us right in our own environments and our own backyard and the things that we can do. Sometimes we think about the work of peace as being kind of out there, and I've got to prepare myself in a very, arduous way. And you can do that. There are programs in peace building and in conflict in all these fields, undergraduate and graduate degrees and so forth. But you don't need to do all of that, right? You can just work within your community when there are particular needs that you can contribute and help to make a difference. And I really encourage people to think locally quite often because that's easier for them to integrate into the lives and the things that they can do.
Boy, I agree with that. In the United Nations Association, we have a Santa Barbara chapter, and we became an international city of peace. There's so
Mhm.
many ways that you can share your talents. Am I finding that as a way to have that career in peace building develop from what you're doing in your normal everyday life?
Yeah, that's what I would say. I would say we do important things in our life. Look, Barbara, a lot of people are working on peace and they don't recognize it. A lot of people are doing those good things and helping build community and helping strengthen resiliency and working to improve, to act against climate change and to, work against racial and injustice and supporting diversity, inclusion, which I think are really important. And they don't recognize that that's really part of peace work, right? That's part of bringing together and including a world that is safer, peaceful, more peaceful, and enriching for everyone, right? It's right there
Boy,
before.
I couldn't agree with you more. Suppose I'm listening to you now and I want to know more about your book and I want to know more about you. Do you have a website we could go to?
Sure, sure. My website is David J. Smith um, consulting.com. So it's David J initial Smith consulting.com. You can go there and read about my consulting work and my book and everything that I do. I also would ask people to go to the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution at George Mason. I'm there, and you can learn about the work that we do there. Yeah, those are places that you can go to find out more.
You know, it's so interesting because one of the references that you gave me, I went to, I think it was the Institute of Peace.
Yes. Yep.
And,
U.S. Institute of Peace. I worked there for many years.
and,
Uh, and people don't even realize something like that exists.
and then it got me to the Kroc
Right.
Center in San Diego. And I
Right.
have two people on my Peace podcast who are in the program at the Kroc Center now working for peace. I have over, you're my number 100, and what are you today? 140 or 40?
Well, I know
About 158. You're
it's the Dovey
158.
Kroc School for Peace Studies at the University of San Diego. I'm on the board. There's a humanitarian master's degree program there, a humanitarian assistance program, and I'm on the board of that. So I know that program very well. I've been to the University of San Diego Kroc School for Peace Studies many times. So it's a wonderful place.
It is a wonderful place, and my husband and I have spoken there. Robert Mueller, who I think when he was a little boy told his dad, "I'm not going to have any wars. I'm going to be a peacemaker." And his dad said, "I feel sorry for you, young man. There's no such thing as a peace builder or a peacemaker." And he said, "I don't care. I'm going to be a peacemaker." And what do you think? He wins an essay contest when he's at the University of Strasbourg, and the response was, "If you win this contest, you will get an internship at the newly created United Nations." What does
Wow.
that tell you, James? I'm
Yeah,
always going to call you James David Smith
sure.
because when you have a dream and you have a vision, the universe supports you. That's one message that I think is so hard for people to understand. Has it happened in your life?
I've been fortunate that I've been able to move from job to job, career to career, and always been able to advance peace in the work that I do. I've been just doing it in different levels. I was a lawyer for many years, and I was involved in divorce mediation, which is a form of conflict resolution. Then I taught in a community college where I taught peace studies. Then I went to work for the U.S. Institute of Peace. I was a Fulbright scholar. I taught peace studies and conflict resolution overseas in the U.S. Fulbright program. So I've been very fortunate, and I'm fortunate. I have a wife who supports me, and I support her. I have a wonderful children. My son was in the Peace Corps, serving in Namibia. It's really been a part of our lives, right?
And peace is kind of like the central theme of my life also. And I can hear it in you that your central theme is your peace that you bring to the world and in the way you provide it to others. And so again, I'm going to ask you to repeat your website.
Okay. It's www.davidjsmithconsulting.com.
And not only does he have information you can use, he does a TED Talk. You can listen to his TED
Yes.
Talk. He has a picture of his son when he's in Libya. I mean, it's a wonderful site.
Thank
And there's
you.
so many resources in his book. I can't recommend it enough.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity and talk with you and the people that listen to you. So I'm glad you're doing very important work. So keep this going. It's so important right now, especially.
Well, thank you. And he said this is important work, and you're the important people, you people who watch these podcasts. And I'm asking you to invite some younger people to join you and watch this podcast and learn how that all of you can contribute to a world of peace. And with that, I thank you. I thank you for joining us. I thank you, David.
Thank you,
I mean,
Barbara.
it just brings so much joy to me to have you named David. My son is named David, and he's just a blessing. And I think all Davids are. So, David J. Smith, do you have a last word or a dream for our planet?
I hope that we all can work for peace in our own little way. Uh, Lots of little ways make big ways, right? So everyone can do their part, and we can really make a difference. So thank you, Barbara.
We are the peace that other people need, and that's why I created peacepodcast.org. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope to see you. And remember, you can hear us on Spotify if you're in your car and you want to make sure that we are all going to hear the words that David spoke today. Thank you for joining us.